Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion that the Senate of the Republic of Kenya should adjourn. And in fact, I'm just nearly coming short of saying this House and government should be dissolved because we have failed and we are cowards. Let us not lie that we are not cowards. Mr. Speaker, what is leading this country right now are citizens' assemblies. Recently, there was a citizen assembly through the space of Twitter or X. It brought about over 1.2 million people to listen. This country, Mr. Speaker, is going through a crisis that is unheard of. This is a crisis. It is a fire that has been lit up by the IMF, and we know very well that IMF does not put out fires in countries, it lights them. Mr. Speaker, the only thing that makes sense today is for us to be with our citizens and try to demystify what is happening in this country. Mr. Speaker, my colleague has spoken here, Senator Mogeni, and he has pointed out the lack of respect to the rule of law by this parliament, because the National Assembly is part of this House, where the National Assembly is amending 3 pieces of legislation that are supposed to be considered by both houses, and nobody gives a hoot in hell about the consequences. This House sat, amended the Housing Act, proposed, by then it was a housing bill, and made sure that what was being put out there, that we are building houses for the poor, those houses cannot be sold. Now, through a miscellaneous amendment, or through the Finance Act, or the Finance Bill, the National Assembly comes in and removes that, because you don't care. Mr. Speaker, some of us are being bashed outside. I am personally being bashed outside because of miscommunication. Mr. Speaker, there was a conflict of interest bill which was brought into this House. That conflict of interest bill, my colleague and I, Senator Mogeni, sat down and looked at all the provisions that were being proposed in that conflict of interest bill, which was sponsored by the IMF and a corrupt Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission of this country. Because, Mr. Speaker, there is no body which is corrupt more than ESCC. ESCC now wanted to be put in as the body that goes out there and look for conflict of interest instead of the body that goes out there and fight corruption. Mr. Speaker, very shortly, the conflict of interest bill was prepared. It was tabled on the National Assembly by the majority leader, Kimani Ichung'wah. And in that conflict of interest bill, it was proposing to amend the following acts which exist: the Leadership and Integrity Act, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act, Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, Public Procurement and Asset Disposable Act. And Mr. Speaker, as part of those provisions that we amended in this House, and 80% of those amendments were actually brought by my colleague. He was attending court in Narok on that day, so I read on his behalf. The one which was really vexing, Mr. Speaker, and it is important that people know out there before they just come out and shout, was in the definition of a relative. And I want to read what the definition of a relative was. Mr. Speaker, before I even read what the definition of a relative was, that bill which was being brought here was being rushed hurriedly. The only thing we could not do was actually to reject that bill. And I now stand corrected. We should have actually rejected it in the first place. Mr. Speaker, the definition of a relative, and it is important that we read, was that it means a person who is related to a public officer by birth, marriage, common law, partnership, adoption, or affinity, and includes a public officer's father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, great aunt, great uncle, first cousin, nephew, niece, husband, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, stepson, stepdaughter, stepbrother, stepsister, half-brother, half-sister, or who is the grandfather or who is the grandmother of the spouse or of the public officer. Mr. Speaker, why on earth should a relative of mine be punished because the citizen of this republic saw fit to put me in this house? A sister-in-law should not be allowed to do business with the government just because Ledama has been elected in this house. That is ludicrous, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, when you think about it, and it is important that people read, because right now the anti-corruption is sponsoring, articles in dailies to say we are being pushed out. And we know, Mr. Speaker, that the anti-corruption is the most corrupt body in this country. Most corrupt body in this country. Governors are swimming in wealth. They are buying properties. Cabinet secretaries are making billions, Mr. Speaker, on a monthly basis by taking bribes simply on issuing licenses. You issue a license and you are told, pay X amount of money. Mr. Speaker, let us call a spade a spade. We have failed as this country. Mr. Speaker, 3 a.m. in the morning, I couldn't sleep. I was asking myself, how powerful can a person be such that over 200 members of parliament who are elected by people to come and represent them cannot reason. They cannot use their medulla oblongata. They just go in as like sheep. They follow. They cannot ask, what are the consequences? What are the unintended consequences? Mr. Speaker, what am I going to be doing in this house? Today, I am mourning a young man from Narok County who was shot outside this parliament. This young man, I'll just remember his name, is from a family of the Shieni in Lolonga. I want to go and mourn with him. I want to go and listen. In fact, what we should do, Mr. Speaker, is that if we care about this country, we should be joining the Gen Zs on the streets and fighting for their rights. We should be joining the Gen Zs because we have failed. You know? But people don't care. We just want to line our own pockets. We just want to appear as if we are important. We are not important. Those people are the ones who have made us important, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, history has great men and women who non-violently walked across. Gandhi and his supporters walked for 240 days until they won. Mr. Speaker, in the US, Martin Luther King, the great march, they walked, and today we can see results. What stops us from doing that? We sit here and we lie to ourselves that we can be able to make a difference. Yet, nowadays we worship our party leaders. We worship the party line. We cannot remember that the people are the ones who have brought us here. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to plead with my colleagues that it is time that we join the citizen assemblies. It is time that we ask ourselves whether we really understand the phrase that power is transient. We are acting as if we will be in these seats forever, for the rest of our lives. What happened yesterday, Mr. Speaker, sir, should be a wake-up call to the citizens of this country. We should all remember that we are here for a very short time. You know, what shocks me, Mr. Speaker, is that what is this thing that really pushes the president so much when blood is pouring out there to want this bill to be passed? You know, what is it? Instead of us saying, and thank you, Senator Chute, for asking a very good question that all of us are asking. Instead of us fighting corruption, going after corrupt cabinet secretaries, going after corrupt governors, we are here trying to overtax citizens. Mr. Speaker, the population of this country, 70% are Gen Zs. I'm a Gen X. I should be joining them, and I want to join them to be able to go out there and fight for these rights. Because we don't care, Mr. Speaker. We don't care. We're just busy lining our own pockets. It is sad, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to correct out there. I proposed amendments to the conflict of interest bill because it was barring the whole clan, the whole citizens of Kenya, from doing business with the government. It was amending legislation which already provide that. It was being engineered by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission so that they can find many loopholes of getting money. In Masai, we say, emala. You know, you have that gourd. Then you decide to open that gourd and the insects goes in when there are so many other avenues. We can easily do the right thing. This parliament can be able to check whether there is any conflict of interest. But we should not punish every other citizen, a step sister-in-law from doing business with the government. Yet, maybe they are doing business with government before I come. So, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, the family of a young man, Eric Ayunishini, my prayers are with you. The family of all the departed Gen Zs, your life will not go out in vain. Mr. Speaker, the statements which are being propelled out there to feed certain interests are further from the truth. These men and women yesterday, young men and women, were marching in the street to fight for their rights. Unarmed, Mr. Speaker. It is hard out there. So I want to beseech you, my colleagues here. This house is supposed to be a house of union. This house is supposed to be a house that brings sanity. Right now, even if we sit here and burn the midnight oil, there's nothing we can be able to do. Because we are being spoken to there, it gets into the left ear, and it pops out of the right ear. Maybe sometimes because we are enticed. Mr. Speaker, I plead with my colleagues here that right now, every one of us seated here should search deeply within his soul. Search deeply. Why are you seated where you are, Senator Lilekwe? Why are you seated where you are, Mofaya? You're seated there not because you fell from heaven like manna. It is because the citizen of the Rakanidhi brought you here. And you have to listen to them. So, Mr. Speaker, we have two choices, and only two choices in this country right now, is to wake up and smell the coffee and know that shit has already hit the fan. Or we resign. All of us go home, we dissolve the government, new elections are held. Let people who care about the fiduciary responsibility of this country come back here. So, Mr. Speaker, we have failed and we have got no business being here. Okay? We have got no business being here. So, Mr. Speaker, I rest my case. But I support the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.